Hi everyone, I'm Mara Webster with SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and we are here today for another one of our conversations at home. As a quick reminder, we are continuing to raise money for SAG-AFTRA members who are currently out of work due to COVID-19 and all the closed productions, and the link to this can be found in the description below this video, so please consider checking that out for us. I'm really excited to be joined today by Regina Hall, who is currently starring in Black Monday, which is airing on Showtime currently in season 2, in which she plays Dawn. I love this show so much, and I've really enjoyed watching your performance. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and watching the show. Thank you.
Yeah. How has it been kind of having the show airing and connecting with people in a different way online as opposed to where you would usually be doing more in-person events?
I know it is completely different. It's also nice. I have to say, everyone and like you, they've been incredibly warm and fun, and they try to make it entertaining. It has been nice to not have to do hours of hair and makeup. It's kind of nice. You know, you don't do a fitting. You're just like, give me that sweatshirt. And it's very, it's very laid back, but it's also really nice to connect and hear, how people feel about the show.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to jump right into talking about season 2, because I feel like so much happened with your character at the end of season 1. And there were a lot of twists and turns that we learned about right at the beginning of season 2, particularly with her relationship with Mo and with Blair, played by Andrew Reynolds and Don Cheadle. And I was curious if you knew from the get-go when you were making season 1 that all of that was actually what was going on beneath the surface, because as an audience, we didn't learn about it until the very end. And if you knew about it and if that informed your performance in any way.
No, I don't think I knew necessarily about it. I mean, season 1, you're not sure if you're going to get a season 2. So people are just kind of floating around like ideas. And no, we get scripts, we would get about 2 a week ahead. So we don't have we don't have tons of lead time. But I did know by the end that, that Dawn, I knew over our hiatus that Dawn would be running the TVD group, or the Blair Dawn group. And so that was kind of fun to think about. And so I think having that information definitely shaped how I saw her visually now as the boss, as opposed to the girl in the office with the bows. So, hopefully she feels a lot more boss lady this season.
Right. And I know that you've talked a little bit in previous interviews about, losing the bows and kind of putting her in this more of a leadership position. And part of your process as an actor is finding your character through their hair, which feels like this is the perfect character to do that through. So I was interested in the way that you found her through that process in season 1, and then how that really told you so much about the way in which she's evolved in this season. Yeah,
I thought, in the first season, I thought of women who I thought in the 80s, were the girls that the guys like, but also smart, so that she wouldn't be too overpowering. And we have a great hair department. So, I mean, they're pretty wonderful. So Madonna wore a lot of bows, and, big hair was in. It was really just feminine, So, I thought of Dawn kind of using her femininity, in a really masculine dominated world. And then this season, I don't know, I thought of Working Girl and Sigourney Weaver, and power hair, no more bows, but also classy, something that maybe said success. And so this is the look that felt really popular. Also you want a look that is going to resonate with an audience, to say, oh, I remember that, my mother had it, or someone who says I had it, you want people to remember the look from the time.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels familiar to everyone watching it. And I also was curious about overall, because you're talking about the femininity in her character. And one of the things I love about the way that you play her is you intersperse that with a masculinity as well, in the way that she talks and her physicality and the way that she moves, because that's the environment that she exists in and what she needs to do to succeed. So I was curious how you said about making the specific choices of how you wanted that to seep into her as a character.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was really important that, so, and the showrunners were very clear that, a lot of times in situations in television shows like that, the woman is the smart one and she's the one who's like, guys, no, don't do that. And Dawn can be just as bad as the guys. So when she's in those kind of settings and it's just she's one of the guys, like, she's not really using her femininity. She's kind of like, it's not important. And then there's scenes, where when she's with a guy or with Mo or doing a deal and, she's a bit more coquettish, I suppose. So just finding the moments in whatever the script is to see where there are moments to play both, because I think Dawn does embrace both of them. And I think sometimes maybe she is a little grossed out by the guys, but she's also not going to be the one that they feel like they can't have around, so she wants to fit in as one of the fellas. And I think sometimes she enjoys a dirty joke as much as the guys do, I mean, she kind of joins in on all the fun. The difference is that she's smart enough to know when to stop and to make money.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about your initial research when you were joining the show as well and developing your character, because I know that you did a lot of research and connecting with people in the finance world, and particularly people who were working there in the 80s, and also, spoke to a Black woman who was working in Wall Street in the 80s. And I was interested specifically in that conversation what some of the useful details were that you drew into your character from that research process.
Probably a couple of things. One, really how male dominated it was, really what it was like to be like, you are really one of the, if not the only woman. Also how indulgent the world was, just understanding that it was the cigarette smoking. It was a completely more politically incorrect time. And then also how hard women worked to get where they were. So that kind of ambition. And I feel like sometimes it was great talking to them, because sometimes women feel apologetic or feel like they need to be apologetic for being ambitious. And speaking to, people, men, and a woman or two who they weren't apologetic about success at all. And I think, having that, because I think sometimes we're like, oh, I do want it, but I don't know, there's always some condition that we have to put in to make it feel like it's okay. And even when we were shooting, I think the season finale in season 1, and I was like, wait, but Dawn, what does Dawn say? Like, I felt so bad that she betrayed Mo. And I was talking to my showrunners and they're like, no, for Dawn, this was business. It was, and that resonated. I remembered that a lot from, the people I was doing research. And she is like, it's just business and this is the way it's done. And so I had to be like, oh, to, make that okay. For Dawn's character to be, even though Regina was like, it's so mean. They were like, Regina, Dawn has fucked Mo. Mo has fucked Dawn over 1,000 times. And I was like, I know, but, she loves him. It was, and then eventually, we talked about it and I got it. I got that thing where she was able to draw the line and divide the line between, if she wanted to get what she wants, she's going to have to take it.
Yeah. But on the positive side of what she's doing now that she's in charge of the group, the CBD group, I love that joke and the way that it just keeps playing out throughout the show, is that she hires all women in the workforce. And I love also that parallel between, this is something that you're playing a character who does, and this is also something that it feels like you do very much in your personal life, whether it's, Women Crush Wednesday, that you're promoting great female stories on Twitter, or charities that you're supporting. And I was just really interested in, how that feels with the importance of that choice in the show and what it reflects in the world that we live in today and the necessity for that across the board.
I loved that. I loved David and Jordan, our showrunners. I loved that. And the first day when we walked in and I was like, there were all women and the one is like, breast pumping, and they're just 2 guys and they don't know how to handle being in the minority. But it was really, it's a lot of fun to go to, because clearly, Blair is never there. I mean, we see he's trotting the globe in season 2, but I really did love having an office of all women being there, like to support Dawn, and like men do it all the time. So I loved it. I loved also how they changed the decor. She went with a mauve and a mint green. And it has, it has a softer look at the TBD group. And so it was a lot. I love that. I mean, it's really, and it also changes the energy of the set when we're shooting, because the first season we had all guys. I don't know if you noticed, it was tons more cigarette smoke, and now it's like, it's cleaner. There's less food and trash.
There's less cocaine.
Less cocaine. So, Dawn can lose her temper, but she's, because Mo set quite an example. But yeah, it's different. It has a different, and it's weird, but because I don't know if the audience can feel it, but the TBD group definitely has a different energy than the Jammer group.
Yeah, and there's a lot of great moments where she's really moving the needle forward and trying to break through that glass ceiling. And sadly, we know watching it in present day that a lot of that movement is still in progress. So that actually made me interested in whether, when you were kind of looking at that side of things for her and her as a character, if you just look specifically at the time set when the show takes place in like the late 80s, or if you actually also incorporated looking at that world and the infrastructure the way it is today, because they both kind of go hand in hand, sadly.
Yeah, they do. They do go hand in hand. And it's funny because in reading it and then doing a lot of the speeches, there's this, for Dawn in the 80s, there's this optimism, like, we are close. I am here. And if I am here, it means this will be the new norm. And it's so not. Like, we're back to the fight again, and but there's something about her hope, her, eternal hope. And there's something about the hope that is existing right now that's really tremendous. And it's great for Dawn. And even though she doesn't realize that, 3+ decades later, we'll still be marching. But the idea is, it's that push and passion for change, that push and passion for equality. And, I'm fired up. I was really fired up when I saw Joe Biden say he was going to have a female running mate. I mean, that made me excited at the potential, of seeing it. I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, everyone that ran, Amy Klobuchar, that ran this year, just seeing women, it was like, and then, the year, that we had where so many women, more women than ever, were elected to the House. So it's there, and it's so weird. I think now it's just that we see it's there, but there's still a lot to do.
Yeah. What does it mean to you personally to be portraying a Black female character who is the head of a financial group in that time set of the late 80s right now?
Oh, it's so great. I mean, I love David and I love Jordan for creating that kind of scenario. It's crazy because we know it wouldn't have happened. Maybe it did, but I was like, it would have been a rarity. But I love the way the show is structured. They don't lose the fact that she is Black. You know what I mean? I don't know if you saw last Sunday's episode with Pastor Newell, who just couldn't, he just couldn't understand that I wasn't a secretary. And that wasn't even race. That was just gender. But then the race part came and he was like, well, you all couldn't be married but I love it because it doesn't ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, you still see Dawn kind of not liking the Grand Wizard, that name, like that he says to Blair. So, I love it. And I love that my office is all women, but of all races and cultures. I love that we have all kinds of people in that office and working in that world, but it's kind of great because we do get to play with, I mean, in the opening monologue that Dawn gives, she says, I'm a Black woman who has my own firm on Wall Street. Like, she doesn't believe in impossible. So I love how it's not an issue, but we don't ignore it. You know what I mean? We actually get to play with it. And I love getting to play with things and look at things in a fun in a fun way. I love, listen, the Lehman, the now one existing Lehman, he makes me laugh. And I don't know, there was something about the guns with the guns with the pin chains. And they think that these are great ideas. And it's just, we get to have so much fun with the absurdity of it all. But then the fact that it's really rooted in some sense of reality and truth.
Yeah, no, it's why she's such a great and empowering character to watch, even in spite of all the flaws that exist. And that's what makes it more of a real character as well.
Yeah, I think so too.
One of the things that I really enjoyed in this season is that we start to get to see some of her history when she was starting out working for the Lehman Brothers, those 1978 flashback scenes. And I was interested in kind of what that added to you in terms of fleshing out your character and the different dimensions that gave you, and understanding who she was and where she came from professionally.
That was really great. Just seeing, the flashback to the scene, ironically, that she had in Lord and Taylor, when she wants that percentage. She wants Mo to make her a partner. And she's like, for all the times I've been called hot coffee. And you really go and you see the moment. And you see, of course, it was Keith who offered cream in the coffee. And I think it's great to see how she and Mo started, and why they have the history of this back and forth, but also understanding that she took the risk with her job, that you really see that she was so fundamental in building the Jammer Group. And for me, it also explains she's got an MBA. Like, these were no favors. That's another reason she can be really unapologetic, and like every step makes her realize that everything that she's done has been earned. Everything that she has gotten is deserved. And I also love knowing the heartbreak for her and Mo, seeing them in happier times, before he called her Tyrone, before he named her Tyrone, seeing them when it was a lot less complicated, and they were, falling in love.
Yeah. Off the back of you mentioning her degree, I actually wanted to ask you a quick question about your degree, because I know that you studied journalism, and I was interested if that kind of naturally lent itself to like a curiosity about people and influenced the way that you would analyze scripts, particularly early on in your career.
I think so. I mean, definitely. I think, I've always been a people watcher. I mean, I find them to be, or I guess us, to be fascinating, not good, not bad, just perplexing almost. I mean, if you just look. And so I think, I think that's what's fascinating about being able to play different roles, is like the discovery of who is this person and who did the writer intend them to be. And, so you get to look at the role, but also how people respond to this character in that world, and what is the world, and how is that person received? And then, being able to really have fun with creating a backstory, where obviously it won't be on screen, or maybe it will, but Dawn's insecurities, the need, what happened in her childhood that made this need to matter and be successful so big for her. So, I mean, I would definitely say that. And I think also just how much time that, you probably spend reading, just different kinds of materials that, newspapers, there's just, people don't really read newspapers anymore, but they're kind of fascinating, and just, I don't know, when you look at it from a world point of view, it's kind of like, it's incessant. They don't, it's like, we just, I think you just watch more stuff and you're like, wow, I didn't know that. It continues to be fascinating.
Yeah. And you also took on a role as a producer on this show as well, which like marks your first foray into producing. And I was interested what some of the learning curves were with that, and what some of the most valuable things that you picked up and learned along the way have been.
Yeah, it's really been being a part of the creative process before then, and feeling. It's been great because they've not only been allowing, they've been encouraging. And so they're like, Regina, why don't you, like looking at edits and looking at things early and being like, oh, and looking at casting and being like, I think this person's great, or, just really being a part of a project, daily, regularly. It's been great. And it's been great in terms of having that voice. And I learned so much from Don, who's an EP, and our showrunners, and, Andrew, who, we talk and we're like, is that okay to ask? Andrew Reynolds and I. And then, so it's really great because there's so much input that you have in the character, but also the show as a whole. And that's pretty wonderful.
Yeah. Through being involved on those sides of things, from casting and looking at some of the early edits, has that kind of informed or changed the way that you look at anything or think of anything as an actor, and that whole process, just from seeing all the behind the scenes and what goes into it in a different way?
Well, I've done it a little bit. I had EP'd on a film, 2 movies before. So, but it definitely, auditioning is a hard process. It's not an easy process. And I think you leave an audition and you're so hard on yourself and you think, was I good or not good? And sometimes it's not that at all. You know what I mean? Sometimes people are great. I think it's one of those things where there's so many factors in a decision. And I think that's what you learn. And so you always, then you realize, all right, well, it's okay to play with something. You know what I mean? It's okay to be like, I think sometimes, like, especially when you're first starting, you think you have to be perfect. You have to do it perfect. And you don't. Like, there have been people I've watched and they've messed up and I've been like, oh, I liked that. So I don't know. I just think that there are a lot of factors, like I said, in the decision. And so it's definitely changed. Maybe, you become hard on yourself in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of great discovery that can come from mistakes.
Oh yeah, it's never about perfection. It's just about truth. You know what I mean? And that's really what you want to resonate.
Yeah. On a different tangent, I actually wanted to ask you a little bit about the physicality of the show, because there's a lot of physical humor, but there's also stunt work involved. And I was interested in your collaborative relationship, I think, with Summer Kane, who plays your stunt double, and the rest of that team, and how you work together with them to pull off all those scenes.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's stunt. You know what? Our stunt teams work really hard. Because they make it, that season finale, obviously. And then when I was jousting, and I was like, I can't joust, but it's like, you will do this part. And I had so much fun that shoot, the first day we did it rained. And we had to cancel it and reshoot it. I remember I was like, we're by a pool and we can't, but I was like, jousting. But they're great. And she's always great. And she goes over like any kind of choreography with me, and she's wonderful. And I feel, and our stunt coordinator, I feel very safe. I mean, I think that's the biggest part when you're doing work like that, is that you feel safe, and they're like, nothing can happen. This is that. And so it's great. It's a fun part of a show that has a lot of, physicality in it, to be able to work with a team that supports you and who you trust.
Yeah. And on the other side of collaboration, obviously you're working very closely day by day with Don Cheadle, with Andrew Reynolds. Your characters are also intertwined at this point. And I was interested how that relationship with them has developed over the 2 seasons, and the way that you work with each other. And like, if it's become, much more straightforward and a quicker process to find the moments within a scene together, now that not just your own characters, but each other so well.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I have to say, from day one, it's a lot better in terms of knowing your character and understanding the show. I think the first day that we shot the pilot, I hadn't been on a show that was like a drama and then a comedy and then serialized, and so, figuring out the tone, I was like, am I the right tone? And I mean, the whole thing, I just wasn't sure. And Don was great, because he came and was like, try it. He just made our world so comfortable. And Don works really hard. Don knows his lines. He's so like, you're like, oh, I got to come ready, because you certainly don't want to be like the weak link. And Andrew too. Andrew, I think he might have photographic memory. I'm gonna say it. And so I think the way that we felt comfortable to work with each other and try things happened very early, because in our first scene, I think the first scene we did was in the season 1 was the bullpen scene where we're, tits, and, I go to Keith and we're doing the whole, so we were all working together. So it's like, oh, I got to see how this person worked and that person worked. And Seth and Evan, they were so wonderful in like being like, this is a comedy. It's a comedy. And like I said, David and Jordan. So I think all of those things come together, and we have a great number 1. Don's a great number 1. He's a great number 1, and Andrew's a great number 2, and I'm rounded out. So it's great.
Are there elements in the writing of the show where you've really seen them expanding your character now that they know you as an actor and they know what your strengths are and all the different places that you can take her? Because it feels like your character just evolved and grew so much more this season.
Oh, definitely. And I think when we first started working together for a season, they were like, we're going to write for you. We're give us a second. We're figuring out who Dawn is. And, especially from the pilot episode, and, really being able to create the romance between she and Mo, but also just to define who Dawn is as a woman, singularly. And not who she is in relationship to Mo, but then who is Dawn Darcy, that name, Dawn Darcy, but who is,
Rolls off the tongue.
Oh yeah, like Blair Pfaff,
like the TBG project.
Exactly. I think I love that I have, that I get to work with writers who want to do that, and, who want to write for your character. It's a wonderful discovery for me. I mean, sometimes it's scary. I'm like, the first episode of this season, they were like, so you're going to do, how Mo had a monologue, you're doing it. And I was like, wait a minute. And I read it and I was like, how do I do this where it's like fun and funny and, can I grab my member that I don't have, and they're like, yes, have fun. And even when I read it and they wrote it in, I was like, you guys are crazy, but it's great. It's great to have two crazy showrunners.
Yeah. And from your time making the show, I wanted to ask if there's ways that you feel like it's helped you to evolve your craft as an actor and what you've really learned about yourself and your abilities through playing this character.
Oh, I think so. I mean, I'm 100% sure. I mean, just for many reasons. Even we shoot a lot of material, in a week, because that show, it's dense. It's a lot of dialogue in 5 days. So just the ability to do that amount is new for me, because before that, I mostly worked on movies, and you have a different sense of time. And then working with Don and Andrew and Casey Wilson, who's like so genius, Paul Scheer was so funny. I mean, there's such a great cast, and everyone shows up with such incredible ideas, and we ad lib, and it's definitely made me sharper. Like I work with that. There's a scene that comes up with Casey, and I have to hold my laugh in, because Tiff is crazy. I mean, and it's like, but that's what I love too, is watching her take a character that is so crazy and who you like so much, like you can't help but love her. I mean, even though even when she talks about her parents were supposed to leave it, that's how everyone does it. It's like the show has its own world, and then Tiff has her own world, and it's great. And so, we have great guest stars. We have Michael Hitchcock. We have Julia Hill. I mean, we have so many great guest stars this season, and it's just fun to play with everyone. I think working with great people can only help you get better.
Yeah, and watching it really feels like everyone is bringing their best work into the show. And I can't wait to watch the rest of this season and future seasons to see all the places that you managed to take this character. And I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that everyone will check out Black Monday on Showtime.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.